you can see them repeating the same stupid mistakes today. And those mistakes, you go through history and you see something that's happened 100 times in the past, and then you see them doing the same thing to our currency supply today. The same, you know, in the U.S., the deficit spending is out of control. And the currency creation, if you, well, we'll put up a chart of base money in the United States. So it's a chart of the cash in circulation, currency in circulation, plus the deposits that the commercial banks have at the Federal Reserve. And it took 200 years to go from $0 in existence, paper dollars, to 825 billion paper dollars that exist. And then it took just a few months to go from that to about 1.75 trillion. And that was with the Bear Stearns, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac bailouts. And then we had, in March of 2008, I'm sorry, March of 2009, they announced another $1.2 trillion worth of, and part of that is actually purchasing bonds directly from the Treasury. Now when they do that, that's just printing currency. That's like just running the printing press. But so the total comes to about 3 trillion paper dollars that will exist very shortly here. That's an I mean, from 825 billion to 3 trillion is an expansion of almost 4 times. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
So there will be more this printed than ever before, which means the dollar keeps coming down and other things keep going up. And that's really what's going to happen. It's predictable. And eventually this will go to its true worth, 0. So all of you savers out there and people trying to save this trash, you're going to lose big time.
They just type them into a computer, the dollars. They don't have to print them anymore. It used to be that you had to mint coinage to expand the currency supply. Then you had to print paper to expand the currency supply. But now all you do is you add zeros to it. Just and boom, you know, it's 10 times.
They don't even have to print this trash anymore.
Right.
It's electronic. That is how fast it's going to hit people.
If I can, as a member of Congress, I can find out more information about what the CIA is doing than what the FOMC is doing, the central bank, what they're doing on monetary policy. That's very, very secretive. The Federal Reserve has been given the power and the authority to create money out of thin air.
The way it works, the Federal Reserve, which is neither federal nor has reserves, it's a private corporation, and you can see this by going to their website and you go to the frequently asked questions. The first question is the Federal Reserve private? And they make their answer very obscure. If you read between the lines, it basically says, well, no, but maybe yes, but sort of no, but really yes, but definitely not. That's what it says. Then, second question, does the Federal Reserve have stockholders? Answer, yes, and by law they are paid a 6% dividend. And it couldn't be more clear. So in the answer to the second question lies the answer to the first. There is no federal agency that has stockholders. If it's got stockholders, it's private. It's that simple. But the way they create currency, the Treasury creates a pretty piece of paper with some ink on it called a bond, and that's basically an IOU. They're going to borrow something from somebody, and it says, I owe you whatever I'm borrowing plus interest over 30 years at such and such percentage. The Federal Reserve then opens up their big old checkbook that has a 0 balance in it. They're broke. There's nothing there. It's 0.00 is the balance. And they write a check for that $100, or in the case of today, trillions, you know. But they write that check and hand that to the Treasury, and when they give that to the Treasury, that currency springs into existence. The Treasury then deposits that into the various branches of the government, and the government throws a few wars, does some deficit spending, what we call pork barrel spending in the United States on things like a bridge to nowhere and stuff like that. And then it eventually ends up in government employees' hands, in the contractors' hands, and so on, and gets deposited into private banks. And then comes the miracle of fractional reserve banking. Say for every $10 that you deposit in your checking account, each country will have its own reserve ratios, but in the United States for years we had a 10% reserve ratio on checking accounts. They deposit it into a checking account. The bank is allowed to loan out. If you deposit 10, they're allowed to loan out 9. And that gets loaned usually to somebody that's buying something. They're buying a house. They're going to sign a mortgage. That's how they're borrowing the money. They're signing this mortgage. They take that $9, they buy the house, and that's going to get deposited into the checking account of the seller of the house. And then, since that's in a checking account under a 10% reserve ratio, they get to loan out 90% of that, which gets redeposited, 90% of that, which gets redeposited, and so on. And for every $10, it creates $100 of brand new currency through fractional reserve banking, and that's actually where most of the currency supply comes from.
The fractional reserve thing, if in the old days anybody wanted to borrow any money, you had to go to the bank and borrow it from the people who were saving money.
Yeah.
Nobody does that anymore. People aren't saving much to start with, and the money you borrow from a bank does not come from the savers. It comes from the bank, as you say, creating it on the spot when you sign your name to the loan document. It's created on the spot. One of the things I've been ragging about is the reserves in the banks. Reserves in the banks have not increased a dime in 10 years. It's the same $41 billion. There's $41 billion of reserves in the banks against how many trillions?
Just 7% of our money supply has a 10% reserve. So that means 0.7% of cash in existence to cover the other, what is that, 99.3%.
It's insane.
Of the money supply.
That's right, that's right. So you talk about fractional reserve. There's no fractional reserve. What's
Right.
a fraction?
There's nothing there.
There's nothing there. 1 cent on $1 million is not much of a fractional reserve.
Right.
Golly.
So getting back to this expansion of how the money supply is created, most of the currency, about 10% or so is base money, and then, which is that hocus-pocus voodoo scam where the Treasury creates an IOU and the Federal Reserve or the central bank of whichever country. So depending on the country, it'll be the Ministry of Finance and then their central bank, which may be labeled Reserve Bank or something like that. And really, when that central bank writes a check is really an IOU too, right? It's an IOU cash, and you can take it to the bank and redeem that check for cash. So they swap IOUs, and currency springs into existence. The thing is, though, after that currency springs into existence and then it gets magnified by fractional reserve banking, we work our asses off for this stuff and save up some of it so that we pay tax to the Treasury so that they can pay back the Federal Reserve or the central bank of whichever country it is the principal plus interest to a private corporation that has, it's not federal and it has no reserves.
And has stockholders.
Yeah, it has stockholders. It's like the biggest scam that has ever been perpetrated. It's amazing in the United States that we've gone along with this for close to 100 years.
The facts are there. Every fact that there is supports the argument. There is a conspiracy to steal all the money from all of us and give it to the banks.
The Federal Reserve makes credit available, but in a way it's fraudulent and it's theft because it does have value. You know, if you go to the bank and they give you $1 million, we all take it. But it becomes valuable only by diluting the value of somebody else who's holding money. If there are those who are left saving money, they're being robbed.
The majority is highly leveraged out on debt. And
Are they?
If they win by us going right into a hyperinflation, the mass stupidity is winning at the expense of the banking system. I've never seen the big boys lose. In all of monetary history, it's
That's
the big
right.
boys that win. So short-term deflation would transfer all everybody's property to the banks.
To the banks.
And then you go into a big inflation, and again, the little guys lose and the banks win.
Well, you know, there are people who think that that is actually the conspiracy that's operating, making the whole system go, that that is the point of the whole thing. And it's hard to argue against it.